The order did not come through a public announcement, a ceremonial meeting, or a carefully polished palace statement. It came quietly, carried inside a sealed folder, and delivered to the gates of Craigowan Lodge. By the time Tom Parker Bowles understood what had happened, his access had already been cancelled. Princess Anne had removed Camilla's son from the late Queen's private holiday residence, and she had done it with a finality that left no room for negotiation. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Craigowan Lodge mattered because Queen Elizabeth II had used it as a guarded retreat beyond the ceremony of royal life. The lodge was not a palace built for public duty. It was a private holiday residence, meaning a secluded family property used for rest rather than official events. And it held the memories and personal boundaries the late monarch had protected for decades. Tom had been allowed limited access after Charles became king. His stays were tied to selected family visits, and his name appeared on internal arrival lists and estate schedules. That permission carried no permanent right, yet over time it began to feel less temporary. Then Anne acted. She signed an order removing Tom from the authorized guest register, the official list of people permitted to enter the estate. She instructed staff to pack his belongings, cancel his clearance, and demand the return of every key connected to the lodge. No committee softened the wording. No administrator accepted blame. The Princess Royal placed her own name beneath the decision. Tom arrived expecting the gate to open. Instead, a security officer stepped forward, lowered his gaze, and told him his clearance no longer existed. He stared at the man as though the words could be corrected. Then a leather case was placed beside him. His belongings were inside. Humiliation replaced confusion, and the gate remained closed. Camilla received the call alone in a morning room. She stiffened when Anne's name was spoken, but anger gave way to disbelief when she learned the order had been carried out. Her son had not merely been warned, he had been removed. Charles learned last. The king demanded to know why his sister had acted without consulting him. An aide answered by placing a second file on his desk. He opened it, read the first page, and stopped speaking. The removal itself was shocking, but the document waiting before the king promised something far more dangerous. Proof that this was not a sudden act of hostility, but the final response to a boundary that had already been crossed. Behind the closed gates stood three people wounded for entirely different reasons. Tom felt publicly diminished by a family that had never fully accepted his place within royal walls. Camilla saw the removal as an attack upon her dignity as queen. Anne saw something else, a private sanctuary belonging to her late mother being absorbed into a new circle of privilege. None of them believed they were defending pride. Each believed they were defending family. Tom Parker Bowles occupied a position few people could fully understand. He was the adult son of the queen consort, the wife of the reigning monarch. But he was not a working royal, a family member who performs official duties on behalf of the crown and follows its formal rules. That left him close enough to enter private royal spaces, yet outside the strict system of accountability that controlled everyone representing the monarchy. Tom remained beside his vehicle after the gate refused to open. The leather case containing his belongings rested near his feet, but he barely looked at it. He did not shout at the security officer or demand that the barrier be raised. He asked only one question. Did his mother know? Beneath his humiliation lived a desperate certainty that Camilla would intervene and make the rejection disappear. Camilla acted within minutes. She summoned a senior aide and ordered him to have the instruction withdrawn before her son left the estate. The queen consort expected resistance, but she did not expect the answer she received. No administrator could reverse the order. Anne had signed it personally, and only a direct confrontation with her could change what had already happened. Camilla dismissed everyone from the room. She gripped the back of a chair until her hands began to tremble, caught between a mother's anger and a queen's wounded pride. Tom had not merely lost access to a house. He had been reminded, at a locked gate, that his connection to the monarch did not make him part of the crown. Anne felt no satisfaction. Craigowan Lodge remained tied to the rare moments when Queen Elizabeth II could step away from ceremony and become simply a mother. The Princess Royal remembered the quiet meals, the private conversations, and the sense that her mother could breathe there without the weight of public expectation. Protecting that place meant protecting something no title could replace. Anne had also requested a complete inventory of every non-royal guest who had stayed at the lodge since Elizabeth's death. Her order was not aimed at one man alone. She was rebuilding the boundary around her mother's private legacy before temporary access became permanent entitlement. William already knew. The prince had been informed before Charles, and his response was careful but decisive. The lodge could never become an extension of anyone's personal household. His quiet support strengthened Anne's position. Before the king had chosen his own, Camilla refused to send another message through aides. She would confront Anne herself. Camilla believed a direct confrontation would force Anne to retreat. But the Princess Royal had entered that meeting carrying a memory neither anger nor rank could erase. The decision at Craigowan Lodge did not begin at its gates. It began months earlier, during a private Christmas gathering when a room once preserved exactly as Queen Elizabeth had left it was unexpectedly opened. What happened inside lasted only minutes, but Anne never forgot it. A personal writing desk was disturbed, a locked drawer was found unfastened, and one casual remark from Tom Parker Bowles convinced the princess that reverence had been replaced by entitlement. Anne had made one request after her mother's death. The small upstairs sitting room was to remain untouched. Estate staff understood why. It was not an official chamber designed for ceremonies or meetings. It was a private room where the late monarch had read personal letters, listened to an old radio, and written notes at a desk used during her final stays. To the Princess Royal, the daughter of the sovereign, known for carrying out demanding public duties, preserving that room meant protecting the woman hidden behind the crown. Tom arrived near Balmoral during a private Christmas visit with a small group of family guests. He had already been told that several rooms inside the lodge remained closed because they still contained Elizabeth's personal belongings. He appeared to accept the restriction. Yet late that evening, something changed. Anne entered the upstairs corridor and saw the sitting room door standing open. She stopped. Inside, Tom stood beside her mother's writing desk, while a drawer that had previously been locked remained partly unfastened. He explained that he had been searching for stationery and believed the room was available to visiting relatives. His words sounded casual. Her reaction was anything but. Anne walked directly to the desk and closed the drawer with both hands. She did not accuse him of stealing. She did not raise her voice. She simply told him to leave. The controlled tone carried more force than anger, because Tom could see that she was not defending furniture. She was defending the last private traces of her mother. Tom insisted that no damage had been done. Then he added that the lodge could not remain a museum forever. The sentence cut deeper than the open drawer. To Anne, it reduced Elizabeth's sanctuary to unused property waiting to be claimed, changed, or handed to the next person with enough influence. An estate attendant approached Anne later that night and gave her a documented account of an earlier conversation. Tom had asked whether Craigowan Lodge might eventually host private culinary weekends and selected personal guests. The Christmas incident no longer appeared to be simple curiosity. It suggested that he had begun imagining a permanent place within the estate. Anne made no public accusation. She ordered staff to preserve the security log, record the opened room, and send the complete file directly to her. For months, Anne carried the insult in silence. But when Camilla attempted to formalize her son's future access, that silence ended, and the family confrontation became unavoidable. The meeting began without advisors, secretaries, or witnesses. Camilla entered expecting an explanation. Anne was waiting with the estate file closed before her. Between them sat the history of a dead queen, the authority of a living king, and the future of a son who had just been turned away. Neither woman raised her voice at first, but when Camilla demanded that the order be withdrawn, Anne answered with 5 words: "He will not return there." Camilla had chosen a private drawing room at Clarence House because she refused to let palace officials stand between 2 members of the same family. Clarence House was her London residence with Charles, but that afternoon, it became neutral ground for a deeply personal battle. She insisted that Tom's removal concerned a mother and her son, not administrative procedure. Anne disagreed. To her, the argument concerned who had the right to control Elizabeth's private legacy. Anne carried the Christmas security report, the written record describing the breach inside the lodge. She also brought copies of the estate access list and Camilla's request for Tom to receive standing permission, meaning continued access without seeking approval for every visit. The papers remained closed until the queen consort accused her of treating her son like an intruder. Camilla's voice tightened as she described the locked gate and the leather case placed beside Tom. She asked whether humiliation had been the point. Anne listened without interrupting. But when the queen said her son had been publicly rejected, the Princess Royal pushed the Christmas report across the table. Anne asked one question. Did Camilla know Tom had entered Elizabeth's preserved sitting room? Camilla reached toward the file, then stopped when she saw the recorded photograph of the open desk drawer. Her anger did not vanish, but it changed. For several seconds, she said nothing. Anne watched her closely, knowing silence had finally entered a conversation that fury had controlled. Camilla argued that Tom had searched only for stationery and caused no damage. Anne replied that damage was not always measured by what had been broken. The request for permanent access had arrived less than 2 weeks after staff were ordered to keep the room untouched. To the princess, that timing proved the lodge was being treated as an available benefit rather than protected family ground. Camilla insisted that Charles had shown sympathy and suggested her son's access could continue. Anne leaned forward. Sympathy was not consent, she said, and the king had never authorized anyone to use their mother's preserved rooms. Anne rose to leave. At that moment, the door opened. Charles stood outside. He had heard enough. Anne had delivered her refusal. Camilla had exposed her anger. And now the decision rested with the one man whose silence had allowed both sides to believe he supported them. Charles had the authority to reverse Anne's order with a signature. The paper was placed before him. The pen rested beside his hand. Camilla believed her husband would defend her son, while Anne believed her brother would protect their mother's sanctuary. Yet the king did not sign. He read the Christmas report twice, removed his glasses, and remained silent as the truth became unavoidable. This dispute had grown because he had postponed a decision he should have made months earlier. Charles held final authority over access to the private royal estates, the family-owned residences managed separately from public palaces and government property. Yet the monarch had entrusted the daily protection of Elizabeth's personal rooms to Anne and a small group of senior household figures. He had wanted peace. Instead, that division of responsibility created two competing expectations inside the same family. Camilla remembered every sympathetic word her husband had spoken about Tom's request. Charles had listened, expressed understanding, and suggested that an arrangement might eventually be possible. But he had never approved it in writing. The queen consort heard reassurance. Anne saw no change to the existing restrictions. The king's hesitation had allowed both women to believe that his silence supported them. Charles reached the line describing Tom's belief that Craigowan Lodge could not remain a museum forever. He winced. The remark forced him to face what Elizabeth's belongings had become after her death. They were no longer simply books, furniture, and private papers. They had become symbols of memory, authority, and belonging objects around which the surviving family now struggled for control. Anne remained with him after everyone else had left. Charles asked whether she could have removed Tom without humiliating him at the gate. The Princess Royal did not deny the harshness. She reminded her brother that a quiet warning had already been delivered after Christmas and had achieved nothing. The king looked away before admitting that he should have supported her when the incident was first documented. Anne then opened another section of the file. Inside rested a draft plan for private dinners and culinary weekends at the lodge under Tom's supervision. The proposal had never received formal approval, but its existence confirmed her deepest fear. A retreat once guarded as their mother's sanctuary was slowly being imagined as a place for private influence and personal entertaining. William spoke to Charles in a private telephone conversation, recorded in the king's official call notes. The prince warned that reversing Anne's decision would suggest that closeness to the sovereign could defeat procedure, stewardship, and respect for the previous monarch's wishes. He did not attack Camilla or Tom. He simply told his father that the crown could not demand boundaries from others, while abandoning them inside its own family. Charles moved the pen away. He set the unsigned reversal aside and instructed an aide to inform Camilla that Anne's order would stand. The absence of a signature became more powerful than any proclamation. And when Camilla understood what Charles had refused to do, the conflict moved from royal procedure into the heart of their marriage. Camilla did not receive the answer from her husband. She received it from an equerry carrying a single sheet of paper. The wording was formal, almost painfully so. The existing restrictions at Craigowan Lodge would remain in force. There was no accusation and no apology, but she understood what it meant. Charles had declined to overrule Anne. Her son would remain outside the gates, and the Queen had been denied the victory she believed her position guaranteed. Camilla read the decision at her writing table while the tea beside her went untouched. An equerry was a royal household officer who carried messages and handled personal duties for senior members of the family, and his presence made the moment feel colder than a conversation ever could. She reached the final sentence, folded the page once, and asked him to leave. Only after the door closed did she whisper that Charles should have told her himself. The consequences moved quickly. Tom's remaining belongings were sent to a private address. His digital clearance was deleted. His planned accommodation was canceled, and staff were told not to accept new requests made in his name. The message was unmistakable. He had not lost one visit. He had lost the assumption that another visit would ever be allowed. Tom telephoned his mother before the afternoon ended. He tried to turn humiliation into anger, insisting that he would never ask to return. Yet his voice weakened when he described standing outside the gate beside his packed belongings. He admitted that the rejection had made him feel as though he had never truly belonged. Camilla told him he was her son and that no locked entrance could change that, but she could not promise the order would be reversed. Camilla's household then received a second instruction. Craigowan Lodge would return to restricted family status, meaning entry would be limited and controlled rather than granted through informal personal requests. A small stewardship group led by Anne would oversee access, while Charles and William would review major decisions. The arrangement mattered because it transformed one painful removal into a lasting rule. Charles attempted to see his wife that evening. Camilla declined. The king waited for several minutes before leaving, without forcing the door. She remained alone, wounded less by the decision than by the way he had allowed another person to deliver it. For the first time, the silence between them felt colder than the argument itself. Anne faced danger of another kind. A senior aide warned her that sections of the access order had reached palace correspondents, journalists assigned to cover the monarchy. The princess refused advice to soften her position. Secrecy, she said, could not disguise a necessary decision. Charles acted before the story could erupt. He asked Anne to meet him alone at Windsor, without aides, papers, or competing voices. The official battle had ended, but the emotional reckoning had only begun, and at Windsor, Charles would finally ask Anne whether protecting the past was worth dividing the living. There were no officials in the room when Charles met Anne at Windsor. No folders, no legal language. Only two aging siblings standing beside the chair their mother once used during private family conversations. The king asked whether Anne regretted what she had done. She looked at the empty chair before answering. Her regret was not removing Tom, she said. Her regret was that the family had allowed grief, privilege, and silence to turn a private room into a battlefield. Charles had chosen the modest sitting room because ceremony could not protect either of them there. Windsor was a royal residence, a home used by the monarch for both official duties and private family life. But this room belonged to memory rather than power. Elizabeth had sat there during quiet weekends, and her absence forced the king and the Princess Royal to speak as brother and sister. Charles admitted that peace had become his weakness. After taking the throne, he had tried to keep every branch of the family from feeling rejected. He offered sympathetic words, delayed firm decisions, and allowed temporary permissions to remain undefined. What he intended as kindness had slowly become expectation. What Anne saw as limited access, Camilla and Tom had begun to understand as acceptance. Charles then spoke about his wife. Camilla believed her son had been singled out because he came from outside royal life and could never fully belong within it. Anne answered without hesitation. Tom had not been removed for who he was. He had been removed because he entered a protected room, dismissed its meaning, and later sought greater control over the lodge. Anne's voice weakened when she described Christmas night. Closing the desk drawer had felt like losing her mother again. Elizabeth's books and handwritten cards were not grand treasures, but they held something more fragile: the private habits of a woman whose entire public life had belonged to others. Watching that world treated like ordinary accommodation had turned sorrow into anger. Charles revealed through their private conversation that he had already spoken directly with Tom. The king had not offered renewed access, but he had acknowledged that the gateside removal was humiliating. He also accepted responsibility for allowing uncertain promises to grow into expectations that should never have existed. Anne did not defend every part of her decision. She admitted Tom's belongings should have been returned privately, instead of being placed beside him outside the gates. Charles accepted that concession, then gave one of his own. The removal itself had been justified. He would create permanent written rules protecting Elizabeth's private rooms from informal use. The agreement did not erase Camilla's pain or Tom's humiliation, but it ended the argument over principle. Charles and Anne left aligned, though not unscarred. Beyond Windsor, however, the dispute had already escaped the family. Inside Windsor, the family had finally found common ground, but beyond its walls, one image of a locked Balmoral gate was about to define the entire controversy. By sunrise, the locked gate at Craigowan Lodge had become more than a boundary. It had become a symbol. Some saw Anne defending the late Queen's memory. Others saw Camilla's son being reminded that royal proximity could never make him royal. Newspapers, broadcasters, and crowds seized upon the family fracture, but one front page captured the public mood most brutally. A photograph of the closed Balmoral entrance beneath 4 words, "The Queen's line holds." National broadcasters moved quickly. They framed the dispute as a clash between inherited duty and informal family privilege, carefully explaining that Tom Parker Bowles was the Queen Consort's son, but held no official royal role. Anne, by contrast, carried responsibility for protecting her mother's private legacy. That difference mattered because the argument was no longer about one rejected visit. It had become a test of whether family closeness could override royal boundaries. Palace officials released a brief statement before midday. It confirmed that access arrangements to private royal residences had been reviewed. A private royal residence meant a property used personally by the family rather than for public state business. The statement named neither Tom nor the Christmas incident, and its restraint only made the story feel more explosive. Every missing detail became another reason for speculation. Camilla saw the front page during breakfast and turned it face down at once. Charles watched her but did not defend the decision again. The king understood that each discussion on television deepened her belief that her son had been rejected before the entire country. She remained composed, yet the silence between them revealed how far the locked gate had reached into their marriage. Anne faced a different reaction. She arrived at a scheduled engagement and heard the crowd calling her name. The princess did not smile in triumph or treat their approval as victory. An elderly woman stepped forward and told her, "Your mother's rooms should remain hers." Anne lowered her eyes for a brief moment, thanked her quietly, and continued, but the words followed her. Outside the Balmoral estate gates, a small crowd gathered with flowers and handwritten cards addressed to Elizabeth. One message was tied to the railing beneath the road leading toward the lodge. "Some places are memories, not rewards." Evening broadcasts repeated that image until it became the public verdict on the dispute. Then the argument changed again. A prominent broadcaster revealed through a documented palace briefing that Charles had formally approved a new stewardship charter. The charter, a written set of rules governing how protected royal property could be used, banned commercial dinners, private hosted events, and social gatherings inside Elizabeth's preserved rooms, unless senior family members agreed unanimously. Tom's removal was no longer temporary. Camilla's defeat was no longer private. Anne's order had become royal policy. Once the king placed the new restrictions in writing, the locked gate ceased to be a temporary family punishment. It became the final boundary by which the monarchy chose to define respect. In the end, Tom Parker Bowles did not return to Craigowan Lodge. The keys were surrendered, the guest register was amended, and the late Queen's sitting room remained untouched. Camilla never accepted the manner of her son's removal, but she stopped asking Charles to reverse it. Anne did not celebrate her victory, because to her, there had been no victory at all. There had only been a line that should never have required defending, and a family forced to remember why it existed. Charles signed the permanent stewardship charter after one final review. The charter was a written set of rules controlling how protected royal property could be used, and its terms were absolute. Craigowan Lodge and Elizabeth's preserved rooms could not be assigned for informal personal use, private entertaining, or extended visits outside arrangements approved by senior members of the family. The king had finally replaced hesitation with certainty. Tom returned the final estate key through the monarch's private secretary. He included no protest, explanation, or request for reconsideration. His silence accepted what the locked gate had already made clear. The removal was final. Yet acceptance could not erase the humiliation of having his belongings returned outside a place he had once believed was open to him. Camilla spoke to her son privately after the key was surrendered. She admitted she could not change the decision. The queen consort remained wounded by Anne's severity and by Charles's failure to confront her directly, but she refused to let bitterness consume Tom. One closed gate, she told him, could not define his relationship with his mother or erase his place within their family. He listened, and for the first time, he stopped demanding a reversal. Anne returned to Craigowan Lodge after the controversy had settled. The Princess Royal entered her mother's sitting room and placed the desk key inside a secured box. She closed the door herself. No anger remained in the gesture, only relief. She had protected a space that could never speak for itself and completed a duty she wished had never become necessary. Charles apologized to Camilla for allowing uncertainty to grow. The king did not withdraw the restriction, and she did not ask him to. Their reconciliation could not remove the wound, but it replaced silence with honesty and ended the struggle over Tom's return. The monarchy learned a harder lesson. Closeness to the crown did not create ownership of its most intimate inheritance. Stewardship meant refusing privilege, even when that refusal wounded the sovereign's own family. Anne's method had been harsh, but her purpose was right. She had not acted to diminish Camilla or punish Tom. She acted because Elizabeth's sanctuary was becoming transferable influence. And so the controversy ended where it began, with a closed door, a surrendered key, and the understanding that the late queen's most private refuge would remain protected, not because it held power, but because it held her memory. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.